You guys showed a lot of support on the 5 trade targets at every position video that I did the other day. So I'm going to do a sell version as some of you guys requested in the comments. Hopefully, none of these players are on your dynasty teams, but if they are, I should definitely give you an idea of what you should be looking to offload them for. This idea for the video came, of course, from the 4 trade value charts that I discussed in the last video. They are dropped right now on flockfantasy.com. And of course, use the promo code FSE to get access to those trade value charts that you're going to see in today's video. Also, leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and let me know down below in the comments who are your biggest sells at every position. Now let's hit the intro. All right, so as you guys can see, these charts have all of these features listed where the players rank for me and Danny, their value in Superflex rookie picks 2024 and 2025, their future value in 2023 picks if you guys haven't had your rookie draft yet, and also the final value is basically the comparison between Keep Trade Cut, which is the market value that we're using in this example, to my value. And if Keep Trade Cut values them higher than me, that would mean that they're a sell because the market is higher on them than I am, and those are the only players pretty much that you're going to see in today's video. So let's start it off with the running back position. A couple names here that you guys might not expect for me to be lower on than the market currently, but Travis Etienne is the first guy that we're going to talk about. I think people are getting a little bit carried away with Travis Etienne. I love the guy. He was my RB1 in the 2021 class. But when you look at the moves that the Jacksonville Jaguars have made and what Travis Etienne has accomplished to this point in his career, I think the fantasy community is a little bit high on Travis Etienne. He's a talented player, but if I told you last year at this time that James Robinson was going to get traded midseason and Travis Etienne was alone in the backfield, we all probably would have drafted this guy at the tail end of the first round expecting a top 5 season. And 12.1 points per game in PPR leagues and the RB23 finish is a bit disappointing for a guy that we had a lot of things break right for last season. In a breakout offense, the Jags took a big step forward. Christian Kirk was awesome. Trevor Lawrence, obviously. We view Travis Etienne as this elite target earning running back, but he's now in a very crowded offense, only commanded a 7.8% target share last year, which ranked 31st among running backs. And now the offense added a third-round running back in the draft who I think can contribute on all 3 downs in Tank Bigsby. Doug Peterson, who's the head coach of this team, typically ran a committee back when he was in Philadelphia. And I think this will be closer to an even split between these 2 running backs than people are probably estimating, given Travis Etienne's current market value. I still think that the bull case exists for him where he can be a low-end RB1, maybe a mid RB1 in fantasy because, maybe his receiving upside increases this year. It's going to be a great offense led by Trevor Lawrence, so maybe he gets more touchdowns, that kind of thing. But I think given the price tag that he's at right now, he absolutely could be considered a sell. If your league is very, very high on him, you could re-roll him right now into like a mid-first and a second, potentially multiple firsts if you wanted to add something on the ETN side. So for me, if you wanted to offload a little bit of risk there, I think that's understandable. I'm still fine holding him, but I do think the market is a tad high on Travis Etienne right now. Moving on to the next sell at the running back position, Javonte Williams gives me the yips a little bit. And Javonte Williams, a guy I was notoriously very high on last year, but obviously the, multi-ligament ACL tear puts a big time damper on his dynasty value. He probably won't be healthy until November, December of this year. And I think when it comes to a third-year running back who's never commanded a big workload, going into a season where he's entering already with injury question marks and a situation like that, they're probably not going to be, inclined to give this guy a massive workload, even if he is on the field. And then we're going to have a guy at the end of his, third season where he's been in the league 3 years and we don't exactly know if he's ever going to be a starting running back. I just think his price tag is destined to go down a little bit. And I think best case scenario, he finishes the season strong like we saw from J.K. Dobbins last year. If you can re-roll Javonte Williams into a pick that's going to get you a running back in next year's class, like a mid to late first round pick, for example, I probably would, offload that risk. I would also offload him for a top 8 pick in this year's class. If you guys haven't had your rookie drafts yet, I would much rather have Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston than Javonte Williams. And of course, anybody going higher than those guys as well. So the final one that I'm not a huge fan of at his current value is Miles Sanders, who I like, as a mid RB2, low-end RB2 from like a redraft standpoint. I just think we already saw this guy's ceiling and it was still only RB2 caliber production. If you could have drawn up a perfect season for Miles Sanders, it would have involved him getting the majority of the work, him scoring a lot of touchdowns, the offense being probably the NFL's breakout offense of the year with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. He had a mobile quarterback who was, drawing a lot of attention away from him, and he scored 11 touchdowns as a, final year of his rookie deal kind of player, where to that point in his career, he was pretty disappointing, right? In 2021, Miles Sanders scored 0 touchdowns. He was pretty much left for dead in most dynasty leagues. And then suddenly he has like a mid RB2 season. And now he's back at like the RB19 in fantasy or in dynasty leagues, even though he's 26 years old. I love Bryce Young. I think he's going to be a great quarterback in the long term, but I doubt he's demanding the same attention that Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles passing game did last year. And that's kind of what made Miles Sanders a functional, RB2 in fantasy, is because he was a complement to the offense. And right now he's kind of the leader of the offense and the guy that they're probably going to rely on quite a bit with a rookie quarterback. So I think him being valued as the RB19 in dynasty right now at 26 years old, like I said, after reaching his career highs and only finishing as RB21 as like absolute ceiling last year. If he didn't have the season he had last year, he'd probably be valued as like a mid-30s dynasty running back right now. And Keep Trade Cut says that you can get a first-round pick for this guy. And I think I would sell him in an instant for a first-round pick. So Miles Sanders, a guy that's a little overrated on the market right now. Although I don't mind his outlook, I think you could probably offload him and mitigate some of that risk. And then, of course, these other dynasty running backs that we're going to be selling, you guys know what I'm about to say. Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. Aging running backs are a similar concept to face planners for rookie wide receivers, where the market sours on them and they typically don't hit at a high rate. They don't usually prove the market wrong. Once we've decided that a running back is probably over the hill or maybe not the same player anymore, we're almost batting 1,000 when it comes to accuracy and hit rates. Mixon, Cook, Kamara, the market has clearly decided that these guys are not the same players anymore. They're not valued as low-end first-round pick assets. They're valued more so in the like mid-second round range. And I think hopefully you got out last year when I talked about selling these guys due to their running back age and touch apex and that kind of thing. But if I can still get mid-second round picks for any of those 3 running backs that I just mentioned, I would definitely take them. If people are going to buy into like a volume projection for Joe Mixon or for Dalvin Cook or whatever they have to do to buy into those players, use it to cash out in most of your dynasty leagues. And I will cover, more details on the running back age and touch apex in a couple weeks when I refresh that study. So let's get into the quarterback sells. And I will say, you'll notice that none of these guys really have the more label beside them on the chart. And the reason for that is because I'm generally higher on quarterbacks in general across the entire market because I value quarterbacks highly in superflex leagues, but I am lower on these guys positionally. I have them ranked lower than some of the other quarterbacks going ahead of them. So the first guy is Jordan Love, and I think Jordan Love is a fine bet to make. I think it's just kind of a risk tolerance factor. I believe he has a chance to hold and to appreciate in value if he looks great this year. It's really if you believe he can do that, because if he doesn't look good, he's probably not going to be a starting quarterback probably anywhere, let alone in Green Bay where, we can project, decent weapons and a young offense and that kind of thing. He's ranked very similarly to guys that I think are better players than him and less risky from him as far as a value standpoint, like Tua Tagovailoa, who, even though he has the injury concern, we know if he's on the field, he's going to be great. Daniel Jones got extended. He had a breakout season last year, and Kenny Pickett is still young enough, and he was a first-round pick to the point that even if he wasn't very good this year, I think he would still have another year of value and a starting job. Personally, I believe that those guys are safer investments, and some of them have higher ceilings than Jordan Love. So for me, if I was in a rebuild and I had Jordan Love on my roster, I wouldn't mind offloading that risk for a mid-first next year, because that is actually what you can get for him according to the market. And I think that's a little rich for my blood. I think he's probably more in the late first type of area, given his value, given his age, and given what could happen this season in Green Bay. Russell Wilson, I have ranked quite a bit lower, I would say, than consensus and then the market. I get it that Sean Payton could come in and fix Russell Wilson. And I think that outcome is very much possible because Sean Payton's a great coach and Russell Wilson, up to this point, up to last year, was a future Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. But what if the other outcome is also an equal possibility? What if Russ actually is washed up and, struggles for, Sean Payton the same way he did for Nathaniel Hackett? Then absolutely nothing will be saving his value, and he might just not be the same quarterback he once was. Right now, he's ranked over guys that are similar age to him that I know are better quarterbacks, at least from what they showed last season, like Kirk Cousins, like Aaron Rodgers. And not only that, but I think those teams will also pass the ball more than the Denver Broncos. And I think he's too risky of a quarterback for me if I'm contending to rely on a QB2. I would much rather swap out Russell Wilson to a Kirk Cousins, to a Aaron Rodgers, even, get up to a Jared Goff or a Geno Smith if you can do that, and, offload some of that risk. Or if you're trying to move to a rebuilding window, maybe go after, Brock Purdy and a second round pick for Russell Wilson, or a second for a third type of pick swap for Russell Wilson, because I do think, there's a really legitimate range of outcomes where this guy's benched by week 7. And I don't think enough people are talking about that. We're kind of just all assuming that Sean Payton is going to fix this guy. And he played legitimately like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. And I don't think that should be ignored. Desmond Ridder is the final guy that we're going to talk about in this tier. I just wasn't a fan of him coming out of Cincinnati last year. I think the Falcons will be in the quarterback market very, very soon, because I think Desmond Ridder is what he is. I think he's just a guy. I don't think he has a super high ceiling. I think he can operate an NFL offense as a low-end starter, high-end backup, but he's not going to stop you from drafting a quarterback in next year's class. And I think, if they perform well this year, the Falcons, it'll probably be due to their young talent that they've accumulated on offense, like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and Tyler Algier. I don't anticipate Desmond Ridder being the catalyst for like a 7 to 10 win season for the Atlanta Falcons if they get to that point. I think that they're going to be locked and loaded in the Kyler Murray trade market, or potentially trying to move up in the draft next year to get a real franchise signal caller. And this situation could crash and burn, and Ridder could be terrible and could be benched at some point for Taylor Heineke, who they paid pretty good backup money to as well. So Ridder, to me, definitely a volatile asset, a guy who was a 3rd round pick, not exactly the highest ceiling in the world, but he can run a little bit, and I suppose he could accumulate value. I just wasn't a fan of him coming out of college, and I don't think he's all that good. So for me, he's a little bit of a sell at this point in time. The only other real quarterback that I think I'm lower on than consensus, even including the fact that I'm higher on quarterbacks in general, is Hendon Hooker. And the reason is similar to Desmond Ridder. My evaluation of Hendon Hooker was that he's like a Teddy Bridgewater, Jacoby Brissett type of quarterback. 3rd round draft capital, nearly 25 years old. He's going to have a short leash if he starts at all. And Jared Goff was good enough last year that I don't think he's going to see the field anytime soon. So what happens if, 2 years from now, Jared Goff is no longer playing at the same level? Are you really going to hand the keys over to 27-year-old Hendon Hooker, or are you going to go after a real franchise quarterback? And I think that's what the Lions would end up doing. So for me, I just don't see a super high ceiling for Hendon Hooker, even if he were to get on the field. I think the Lions would probably be well suited to go after better options on the trade market or in the NFL draft next year. So moving on to the wide receiver position, also like quarterback, a little bit tough to decipher which guys I'm lower on than the market, because generally speaking, I value wide receivers very highly, and the market doesn't always do that. But I did find a couple guys that I am lower on than the market, and it doesn't really feel like I'm lower on some of these guys, but Treylon Burks is the first one. I already talked about him in last week's video, players plummeting down my rankings. But essentially what I talked about in that video is that I find him very risky because of the profile he had coming into the NFL, which is a slower developing wide receiver that could eventually reach his ceiling by year 3. Dynasty players aren't very patient. I think Treylon Burks could be the victim of people giving up on him too early. I find him risky because of that profile as well, because he performed poorly in reception perception, that he wasn't, a very talented route runner. And that's important in the NFL. And then, of course, the underlying peripherals of the team, which is that Tennessee's not going to want to throw the ball very much. They have a quarterback transition, potentially going from Tannehill to a rookie quarterback in Will Levis. If Burks doesn't do it yet again, if he doesn't have a breakout season this year, I think the market will sour quite quickly on him, which is why I would rather be a little cautiously optimistic with him rather than, all in. I think he's going to break out this season. So DJ Moore, again, another guy that I don't really feel that low on, but I guess I am low on him given his market value. The way I look at DJ Moore is pretty simple. He's never finished higher than wide receiver 23 in points per game. So he is, by all definitions, like a fringe wide receiver 2-3. And I think a lot of people are expecting this to be exactly the same as A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts with DJ Moore and Justin Fields. While I trust Justin Fields to take a step forward as a passing prospect, as a passing quarterback, I don't think that this is as simple as saying this offense will break out to the same degree that the Philadelphia Eagles offense did. And not to mention that even if it does, we had an offense that ranked as the lowest, most run heavy offense since the 05 Steelers last year. And even if that pass volume goes up a little bit, I don't expect them to suddenly be a pass heavy offense. And they still have Darnell Mooney there, who's a proven target earner. They still have Chase Claypool there, who's had spurts of, earning targets as well. And Cole Kmet's actually earned a lot of targets at the tight end position. So it's not just DJ Moore there. They're going to have a 500 pass attempt offense with a couple different quality target earners. And I think DJ Moore is destined to be exactly who he's been, which is a wide receiver 2-3 type. He's not going to have a top 10 ceiling, a top 5 ceiling. He could finish as wide receiver 16 in points per game if he gets lucky in the touchdown department, but I don't think he's going to have some breakout monster season and finish as a top 5 receiver, which is where I think some people are thinking is potentially the range of outcomes for him. So with the last guy in this tier, again, I don't feel low on Terry McLaurin, but apparently I am low on Terry McLaurin. And it makes sense because I'm so high on Jahan Dotson, but Terry is sneakily almost 28 years old, and he has always been, like DJ Moore, a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 type of option. And even though I love Sam Howell and think he could take a huge step forward and, carry this offense potentially, there's no guarantee he's any better than any other quarterback that Terry McLaurin has played. I feel like literally every year we say that Terry McLaurin has the best quarterback play of his career. First it was Ryan Fitzpatrick, then it was, Carson Wentz, and now, Sam Howell, who I think can be something, is not necessarily a guarantee. And I also expect Jahan Dotson to be like the 1B in this offense. I think Curtis Samuel is going to contribute more than people think. And I think they're going to rely heavily on their run game with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. So for me, it's basically that I just prefer Dotson and Samuel at cost, especially from a redraft perspective. But Terry's still the number 1, and I still think he's the best receiver on the team. I just think that the target shares, which have been declining the last 3 years for Terry McLaurin, are going to, keep the same value that he's always had, which is low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. He's probably not going to get much better than that. And I don't see a high ceiling type of option with Terry McLaurin. I would rather take the swing on some of the other guys in that area. And then finally, 2 other guys that I'm lower on, both rookie wide receivers from this class, Jonathan Mingo and Rashee Rice. I think both of these guys were pretty overrated given, landing spot and draft capital and rookie drafts. Mingo is overrated on the market. He's going ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, and Elijah Moore, if you want to compare him to another young wide receiver. I broke him down in depth in the wide receivers to target and avoid video, if you guys want to check that video out. But the long and short of my argument in that video was that, he performs well in all of the things that mostly don't matter for wide receivers, which is like size, athleticism, those kind of things. But he didn't perform well in the things that do matter for wide receiver prospects, which is like market share, production, target share, those kind of things. Mingo was not an overly productive receiver in college. And for me, that makes him very risky in rookie drafts and in startup drafts alike. So for me, I can't take this guy as like a top 40 wide receiver in a startup, which is where he's currently going right now. And Rashee Rice is kind of in a similar boat. He's not a great prospect to warrant going around the guys that he's going around: Elijah Moore, Josh Downs, Gabe Davis, ahead of Tyler Lockett, who can give you some great production if you need it. Rashee Rice to me needs to be in like the 60s or 70s where I have him ranked, and he's going inside the top 50 wide receivers in Dynasty right now. So he's also a guy I'm a little bit lower on. Now let's move on to the final position, which is tight ends. This one, I mean, it's difficult to say that Travis Kelce is a sell because he's so goddamn productive, especially from a 1-year production window. If you could have any tight end in fantasy, it's 100% Travis Kelce. But if you think about him, the asset, he also has some risk, right? He could retire after this year. He could fall off. He's 34 years old. There's risk to Travis Kelce that's not baked into his price. And I get it. Tight end's such a scarce position. There's nobody good that if you want to take Travis Kelce as a top 4, top 3, maybe even a tight end 1 in Dynasty, I understand where you get there. But for me, I'm all about long-term accumulation of value. And a 34-year-old tight end who might only play 1 more year is not necessarily the type of asset I want to hold on my roster unless I am, bar none, one of the best 3 teams in my league and I have a real chance to win the championship. So, I mean, I think it should go without saying, but if you have Travis Kelce on your roster and you're not one of the best teams in the league, you should probably sell Travis Kelce. Or even if you do have him, you should maybe even try and increase your longevity by trading for like George Kittle in a second or something like that. Getting some value, still getting yourself a stud tight end and increasing your longevity that way. So that's my thoughts on Kelce. Again, unless if you're a, win now best team in your league contender, don't sell Travis Kelce, but that's just my thoughts on him in general as a total asset. Dalton Kincaid, I assumed would have been priced accordingly. I was like, oh, he's probably like a top 10 tight end in Dynasty. People aren't going to go crazy about Dalton Kincaid, but people have gone crazy about Dalton Kincaid. He ranks among the top 6 tight ends in Dynasty right now. His value is on par with George Kittle, and he's more valuable than Dallas Goedert, according to the market. He's still a rookie tight end, guys. Some risk has to be baked into that price tag because rookie tight ends don't typically produce. And as I've often said, I will just take Michael Mayer, 6, 7, 8 picks in a rookie draft later than Dalton Kincaid because I viewed Michael Mayer as the better prospects coming into the draft. And if you need a tight end, just take Dalton Kincaid and go buy George Kittle or Dallas Goedert with him because I don't think he should be going among guys that we already know can produce at a high level, top 5 tight end level seasons. As good as Dalton Kincaid could be from a Dynasty perspective, if he hits this year, it's not a sure thing. He's a rookie tight end, and those hit rates are pretty weak. So as much as the upside is there, I think we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. And then Darren Waller, who's the final guy in this tier here. He's 31 years old, sneakily, so he's a little bit older. And he's only played a combined full allotment of snaps in 16 out of 34 games the last 2 years. So this guy's dealt with a lot of injuries, and I know the Giants don't really have any pass-catching talent to compete for targets with Darren Waller. So if he can stay healthy, he'll probably earn a lot of targets, but I think he's much more risky than like the early to mid second round price tag that he carries would indicate, because he could very well just be washed. And I'm sure anybody that's drafted Darren Waller the last couple of years is probably not too excited about him on the Giants at all. Definitely a decent option if you're a contender and you just want to hold on to Darren Waller. But I do think people are just expecting him to kind of bounce back there in New York, and it's by no means a guarantee. And then finally, some later two names at the tight end position. Luke Musgrave. I've talked at length basically about how I prefer Tucker Kraft straight up to Luke Musgrave. So by that logic, I'd probably have to be lower on Luke Musgrave. If you have two day 2 pick tight ends, which the Green Bay Packers have, both of them were elite athletes. So don't give me athleticism for Musgrave over Kraft. And only one of them produced in college, which was Kraft. And I get it was D2, but he still produced at a high level. Give me the guy that actually produced versus the guy that didn't. To me, it's a very simple, equation there. So I prefer Kraft straight up to Luke Musgrave, especially at cost in rookie drafts and in startups. I have so many shares of Tucker Kraft as a result of that. And then Trey McBride, also somebody that I'm a bit lower on as well. I get it. Tight ends take a little bit of time to develop, but you got to show something your rookie season. And he had the opportunity. Zach Ertz got hurt. If I told you again, going into this season, Zach Ertz was going to get hurt and Trey McBride was going to be the starting tight end there, you probably would have drafted a lot more Trey McBride. But he only had like 2 games with more than 4 targets out of the like 8 or 9 games that he played with Zach Ertz off of the field. And he was running routes at a high level, at a high percentage. He was also kind of inefficient on his targets, his routes ranking outside the top 25 in yards per target, yards per reception, yards per team pass attempts, and yards per route run. He was not overly efficient as a tight end. So for me, I'm a little bit more concerned that Trey McBride might just not be that good, as opposed to, just chalking it up to tight ends taking a while to develop. So if you made it to the end of this video, of course, leave a like if you received any value at all. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't checked out this channel before and, you want to show your support, definitely do that. We are closing in on 20,000 subscribers. Really appreciate all the support you guys have shown us the last couple months or so. And also, if you want access to all of these trade value charts, every position, I went like 60 deep at running back, like 75 deep at wide receiver, like 40 and 50 deep at tight end and quarterback. Head on over to flockfantasy.com and use the promo code FSE to get 30% off, plus first priority to Dynasty Decisions episodes and our fantasy hotline in the Discord, so you can ask us questions whenever you want. Check out all of our show sponsors if you want to support the show as well. Underdog Fantasy for best ball and pick'em needs. Aura, they have the best tools to protect your family and your online identity. And of course, our new sponsor, Elite Picks. If you guys are diehard bettors, if you are grinding MLB bets or NBA bets in the NBA playoffs right now, NHL bets for the hockey playoffs right now, you can get pro bettors picks every day for just $5 for your first day at sign up if you use our link down below in the description. So all that stuff is linked down below if you want to support us in any way. Really appreciate all the support. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.